Alright, everybody ready? Overwatch King of the Hill control map sub-map tier list. Right now it's September 2025, so if there's any maps I missed, that's why. Okay, here we go. At the very bottom is going to be Antarctic Peninsula's sub-level. This is definitely my least favorite map out of the sub-maps in this game. I don't like how oppressive this high ground feels to play against and on. I don't like how all the choke points in this map box you like a fish and are really long for some reason. This map is also just really blue. You'd think when the map is an ice cave that it would look at least interesting in some places, but this whole map is just blue and gray, and that's it. Every time I end up playing on this map, I end up not even seeing 40% of this place. Did you know there's a bounce pad on this map? I bet you didn't, because it's over here. Who goes over here? This subpoint is called sub-level, and I couldn't agree more. It's not really a surprise that this one is going in the bottom of F tier. But I have a surprise for you guys, which is that the next map on F tier is Oasis City Center. Oh my god. Where do I even begin with my disdain for this particular subpoint in general? I'll start with definitely my biggest problem with this map, which is this gargantuan high ground overlooking the entire control point. Not only is it really high off the ground, meaning that some characters can't even access it with movement abilities, but the only place you can access it is one jump pad next to a cliff. Can you imagine being a Cassidy trying to access this high ground against a Lucio? It's not possible. And the sight lines, oh my god, the sight lines. You cannot leave your spawn without being chipped by somebody standing main just shooting at you for free. You may think that this pillar in the middle stops some of it, but it ends up not even mattering. Which makes the problem of hit scans and crazy spam characters already a problem on this map due to the huge colossal high ground even more of a problem. But don't worry everybody, they've given you a mega pack. Hanging over this goddamn cliff. Who's gonna go for this? Every mega on this map actually is right next to a place where you can die. This one's next to the cars, which I'm not even gonna get into in this video. All you have to know is I think this map is pretty bad. It's not the worst map, but it's certainly one of my least favorites. We're moving on to D tier now. In D tier, first one, Antarctic Peninsula Labs. This map, also not very good. Surprise. I've kind of used this map as bedrock because when I play this map, I'm not really having fun, but I'm not like losing mental health points either, so I think D tier is a pretty good spot. I think my biggest problem with this map is that there's a power imbalance. It's kind of the opposite of Oasis City Center. On City Center, the high ground is really inaccessible, and the defenders just get to stay there forever until they get derooted. But there's a really easy staircase coming just straight onto this high ground from both sides, which means it's really easy to just take control of it. Also, just like sub-level, there's a lot of just really small hallways, which is never fun for anyone, other than Junkrat maybe. And just like Junkrat players, this map doesn't make me feel very good. But hey, at least you're on F tier, right? Next map, it's Samoa Volcano. Now, I think this map looks pretty cool. I think the idea of a laboratory being inside of an active volcano looks pretty cool. Who would have thought? But the actual layout of this level, not my favorite. It's not as painful as something like sub-level, but I think it's still really grindy, really choky, and you get shot at from your spawn again, which is not cool. And the point itself is kind of a slugfest. It's kind of like if you took another control map and you shrunk it down really small and put it in the center of another control map. It's really interesting, but it's a little bit bad. The walk-up for attackers is just kind of an elbow curve to the point, unless of course you want to jam your head in another small hallway flank route. There's a bounce pad under this point, which is cool sometimes, but I never really see it come into any effect, except maybe one time. But other than that, it's kind of useless. And so because of the funny jump pad, it goes above labs. Anyway, let me talk badly about another map you might like. Downtown Busan is a mixed bag for me. On the one hand, I think mid is pretty cool. I mean, the train is cool, to say the least. I like how you can hear a movie playing if you stand close enough to the movie theater door. But outside of some cool small map gimmicks, there's another inaccessible high ground. This one is actually inaccessible. There's no way to get to it unless you have a movement ability, which is cool. And if you want to avoid peeking this high ground, you have to run through this really small hallway that leads you to a cliff in which a train can come through and kill you, which is pretty cool. All in all, the map itself is just a big open mid-fight with a bunch of chokes leading to the center, which, as you can probably imagine, gets stale after about the third time in a row of playing. But the spawn rooms are pretty cool. This one's a karaoke bar that you can actually have characters sing at the microphone. And this one is a PC bang. This is a little game where Lucio was actually on the cover. And you can play DDR in the front. It's a little bit of a letdown, you ask me, but there's some cool stuff going on. And our next map is the second downtown of the game, which is Samoa Downtown. I describe this map as if Oasis City Center had its high ground neutered and had all of its ramps and long sight lines closed down a little bit. Now, we are still in the D tier, don't get me wrong. This is not a fantastic map in my opinion, but it's better than a lot of the other ones we've just covered. The placement of this mega pack, for example, I think really benefits the attackers, which is the opposite of Oasis, considering you have to run over a pit in order to access something like this. The main choke is also weirdly fine. Like, I don't have a problem with it. This aquarium makes the fights break out in a really interesting way, and I'm totally cool with that. The map's concept is basically a island tourist attraction, which lets them do some pretty cool things, like put up these little Easter Island head stuff, put a lot of coffee shops on the map, tour buses, aquarium tanks, stuff like that. This map is a little grindy, but the beach aesthetic tricks you into thinking it's fine, so middle of D tier. Now, Lijiang Control Center, I'm convinced is cursed, or at least made by someone on drugs, because none of this shit makes any sense to me. First, you walk out of spawn, and you're greeted by this cute little stone garden. It's nice, but once you walk through those doors, you are just in infinite, small chokes and hallways all the way down. This is a close-range hero's playground, man. Like, if your name is Venture, or Junkrat, or Tracer, or Reinhardt, or Reaper, or Mei, you probably love this map because you can do so much with these small hallways this game gives you. And then all of these small corridors and hallways lead to this middle point. And can someone please explain why this high ground is here? I actually want an answer. It's one small platform, and I don't understand what its function is. The way you get there is this vent room, by the way, that I showed earlier, but still, I don't know, it's just so silly looking. Look at how small it is. I don't know, if you like Brawl, you probably love this map. If you like playing other compositions, this map probably isn't your favorite. Put it in D tier. As we enter the C tier of maps, we kind of enter a twilight where I don't really have a whole lot to say about these maps, mainly because they're so in the middle that it's not really a contest as to if they're good or bad. They're fine. But this is the one map that I think I might have to explain myself on. A lot of people think Samoa maps are just bad, and maybe you're right, but I think that this one is probably the most tolerable for me. I don't mind the midpoint. I think that these cabanas are a little bit scuffed. Like, it's kind of hard to push through these if you're anybody. But I think the aesthetic of this map is fantastic. I love the beach aesthetic. I love the tropical feel of all the greenery and all the sand, all the ocean to the side of the point, all the surfboards just around everywhere. There are little crabs in this map that you can see running around. Just a beautiful looking map. But you know, that's just my 2 cents. Anyway, moving on. Busan Sanctuary, this map looks great. Again, it's just like Samoa Beach. I know I'm repeating myself. I think that the only thing I really have to say about this map that's negative is that this sightline is way too long. Also, you shouldn't be able to stand on this drum. I would have probably rated this map a lot lower, but I don't know. I had an epiphany, and I decided to put it higher. The epiphany may have come from the fact that I remembered that this clip exists. Put that shit in the XQC tier. I'm so funny. Next is Lijiang Night Market, which is funny because sometimes this map is during the day. Just thought I'd point that out. I like the midpoint of this map. I love the idea of this giant box suspended over a cliff on all sides. The point's also surrounded by a wall of buildings where the only way to get through them are 5-foot doorways. It almost looked like some kind of dev challenge where the challenge was design a map with as many small windows and doorways as you can and see if the player will notice. But if you can break past these chokes, map's okay. It's in C tier for a reason. Nepal Village is the worst map I've ever seen. But Ethan, I can hear you saying, why don't you put it in F tier next to Shitty Center? In fact, here, let me walk you through the process. Imagine you've just installed this game and this is the first map you play. You pick your character and you leave spawn and you're instantly given a decision between these two branching pathways you see before you. If you go this way, eventually you'll get spit out around here. But let's rewind back to here. Instead, you go this way. Now you've arrived at another fork in the road. If your team wants to go this way, you're forced to fight through this really small room, which leads to this choke point. But maybe this choke point's too much for you and you just can't break through this small door. Well, let's back up again. This time, let's go this way. Then you arrive here, another fork in the road. Interesting. Let's go this way, why don't we? Boom, you're in another really small room with another really bad choke point, except now you're here. But if you don't want to go that way, then maybe you can just go this way. But it turns out that path is the same exact path you took at the very beginning of the game. The game is constantly pulling you in different directions. If this choke isn't working, try this one right next to it. If the high ground is too oppressive, avoid it, or maybe clear them off it before you push in. It's a really interesting idea, but I hate the fact that this high ground dictates the entire game. It almost feels like some ramshackle makeshift tutorial to try to teach you how to deal with high grounds and choke points. And while I definitely hate those two things, I can't get mad at a map that tries to teach you while you're playing it. Putting it in fucking, I don't know, C tier, man. Once you learn it, it's not that bad. Now, if you ask me, Ilios Well is where the maps start going from bad but tolerable to just good. I have a few grievances with it, but the problems kind of solve themselves. Like, the sightlines are so long that it begins to become impractical to shoot down them because damage fall off is so intense that you're only really doing a small amount of damage to people you shoot at. Some people may think I have a problem with this high ground, but this windmill is so in the way of it being useful that I actually don't have any problems with it. It's really just a good flank route for people who can fly or climb. No, my biggest problem with this map is actually the well in Ilios Well. It's so big that there's actually very little point to play on. Also, anybody who's played on this map for more than a few minutes could tell you that roadhogs are a blight on this point in particular. The only real refuge from the pit is this room inside the lighthouse, which is so small and cluttered and, again, full of tiny hallways that I really can't recommend anybody play any character with no mobility on this point. But yeah, there are a few small indoor areas, and giving Roadhog a map where he can thrive isn't really going to hurt anybody. We're putting this in B tier. Now, to me personally, Ilios Lighthouse isn't even really a map, it's more of a thought experiment. They asked the question, what if we made a point so unadvantageous that it's infinitely better to play anywhere else than on the objective? I've talked a lot about high grounds and how important they are to these kinds of maps. Well, the objective on Lighthouse is on the low ground of the low ground. It's the lowest point of the map you can get to without falling off of it. And this makes you think, well, where is the most important point to stand on this map? Well, it's right here actually. These two fort-esque high grounds that are always facing each other, always overlooking the point, and much like the actual two fort on TF2, will just have snipers standing on it for the whole game, waiting for a single opportunity to present itself. The map almost reminds me of a Lijiang Night Market kind of map, except they've cut away most of the really bad choke points and instead increased the actual interesting parts of the map, which are the objective. Now, is this my favorite map? No, not by a country mile, but I think this does a good job of subsetting some of the more annoying parts of this game and making them more tolerable. Like, this high ground is annoying, but it's not broken. You can really easily jump this person and they'd have to resort to either jumping off the high ground or crawling into a really small room, which is akin to dying. If Antarctic Peninsula Labs was my bedrock, I would call this the soil. This is definitely good grounding for a good map. Yada yada yada, put it in B tier, the light belongs to me, Winslow. Hey, do you guys remember 10 seconds ago when I said playing on Ilios Lighthouse Point is a disadvantage? Because I remember that. I remember when I said that. And this map, fuck you. If I had to use one word to describe Nepal Shrine, it would be insurmountable. The objective is on this fuck you ass high ground that requires you to run 30 feet until you hit the fucking staircase. Going main is a real shit show. But you can circumvent a lot of that shit by taking one of the many flank routes that this map has. It's also a breath of fresh air in a game full of small-ass doorways and choke points to have the side rooms be as open as the ones are on this map. A lot of people like to force brawl comps in this map, but I actually think that anything can work. I've seen almost every character under the sun played here, and I think the kind of win more point design they went for helps facilitate some of those less picked characters to just do better here. This map is pretty open, which lends itself nicely to certain snipers, but if you're a close-range specialist, you might not like this point as much, but there's still spots where it can work. I don't know, I'm a fan of this one, but I don't know if I'd put it any higher than a B just because of how stupid this staircase is. I don't think Icebreaker's that bad. You might be surprised by this. I put the other two Antarctic Peninsula maps significantly lower on the tier list than this. But one night I slept on it, and I realized that Labs and Sublevel are significantly, by far, my least favorite points in the game, but I don't mind this one. On a good day, I might even say I have fun playing on this map. And that's because this map is open, and there are no oppressive high grounds. I don't actually get to play this map very often because most people don't vote for it when the map voting system comes up. Remove that, by the way. When this map does break through the map voting system that I hate, I feel as though this map is the most fair out of the three Icebreaker maps. Let's just say I enjoy its simplicity, And I'm okay with that. I think that gimmicks kind of take away from some of the better maps. This is also the point with animated penguins, so I think that's a positive. It's stopping B tier. We have finally chipped away at the shit salad that is F through B tier, and we've arrived at dessert, the A and the S tier. These maps are, in my opinion, the best sub-maps for King of the Hill for Control, and Mecha Base is a good map. I said it. If you asked me a few years ago where I would have placed Mecha Base on this tier list, I think it would have probably been in D tier, but time is the wisest counselor, and time has made me appreciate this map a whole lot more than I did a few years ago. It took a few years, but I think this map is deserving of some praise. Some people might actually call me a hypocrite because this map does have some crazy high grounds, but I think that these high grounds are actually pretty well separated from the objective. It almost feels like the map has been split in two, with the high ground and the low ground being entirely different areas of the map. The top part of the map is very cluttered. There's crates of stuff, technology everywhere, there's computers, there's massive pillars, presumably to launch the mechs out of. It almost feels like this is designed to be a point on its own. Just off of this high ground is this huge mech hangar where the objective is. These orange walls will lower and raise on a timer, and if you really can't push into this high ground that controls this point, there's plenty of flank routes and routes out of your spawn room that can lead you right to the objective without even touching this high ground. And while there's some small exits and entries for choke points, I think the map does a good job of bridging these two entrances together, making it so if you get stuffed at one door, you're only a quick rotation away from the other door. So yeah, Mecha Base pretty good. This shit's A tier. There are a few maps in the game that are considered boot maps by most standards. Ilios Well was one of them, and the other one's this. I've seen more people get flung off the map on Lijiang Gardens than I think in any other map in the game. And it's fucking hilarious. If you tread a path on this bridge without a movement ability or a shield, you are cooked. You are dead. Call GG. But if you have to be one of those characters, you can always go this way, and you're a lot safer than you were the other way, but it's still not great. And if you remember what I said about Lijiang Control Center, where the close range characters are very, very good, this is where mobility characters really take the stage, and it's so much fun, man. I don't know what to tell you. A lot of maps give some hyper-defensive, super slow comps some viability, so it feels like a breath of fresh air when you play on a map where mobility reigns supreme. Wrecking Ball, Winston, D.Va, Doomfist, Genji, Tracer, Pharah, Lucio, Mercy, all of these characters feel so good on this map. And it's not a coincidence that those are the most fun characters, and why this map is rated so highly. I sort of understand where people are coming from. They say they don't like this point, especially the people who play primarily slower, less agile characters, but if you're playing Overwatch 2 at this point, and you can't play a character that plays this map well, then like, what are you really doing, man? A well-deserved A tier. A lot of maps in Overwatch follow the same design philosophy. You throw a couple buildings here and there, you keep the main point open, you put some megas in important spots, and you just make sure you can't get killed from your spawn room. Gardens takes these core ideas and refines them down to a science. Narrow choke points have been replaced with giant open archways. The massive insurmountable high grounds of City Center have been replaced with a far more manageable one. And let me just say that there's a reason that this archetype of map is all over the place in this game. And it's because they're trying to emulate how good this map is. Does this point on sub-level look familiar to you? Well, it should, because it's trying to emulate Oasis Gardens. But sub-level's incredibly tight and irritating hallways are replaced with vast, open, branching pathways on Oasis Gardens. This map's a classic in my book, and I can't rate it any lower than an A, which is exactly where it's going. Nepal's Sanctum is weird. It's this fusion of ideas that when they're combined together, make for this really weird mess of a map, but I fucking love this shit, man. The choke coming from main is this T-junction with a mega health pack in the center. Normally mega health packs like this are hidden away for someone to retreat to, but this one is very much in the middle of the action, making fights in this room instead feel like a jockey for this health pack instead of just a war of who can out-heal who. Mid has this very high ceiling and this large death pit in the center, but this mid pit is designed in a way where it's only on one side of the objective, unlike Ilios Well. This means that you can actually play on the point and not be risky of dying. On the side room, there's this weird elevator-like passage that allows people from this mega room to drop down and access the objective. And vice versa, people can use mobility to access this mega from the objective and then drop right back down and recontest it. The aforementioned high ceilings makes it so that characters like Pharah, Echo, Mercy all feel like they have a place on this map while not being outwardly broken. All in all, this map's feverish ideas kind of give it this air of creativity. I can't fault it for being something so unique and different to this genre and game mode. This map is definitely a favorite of mine, and I'm putting it in an S tier. Oasis University and the next map I'm going to talk about are oftentimes back and forth traded as my favorite King of the Hill subpoint. It's always just one of the two of them. University is like if you took a more fleshed out Ilios Well and made it into an actually fun and engaging experience for both teams. If we were playing on Ilios Well, if you got knocked into this pit in the center, you would just be killed. But on University, if you get knocked into this pit, instead you have a fate worse than death, which is a long, shameful walk back up these weird staircases onto the objective again. They even gave you a mega pack as a consolation prize. The high ground on this map is strong, but the windows in which you observe out of them are so small and congested that I feel like peeking them means that you're oftentimes putting yourself at more risk than not peeking them. Also, due to the map geometry, this area of the map is so isolated from the rest of your team that you can very easily get dove and killed over here. The opening choke is split into two differentiating paths, which is I think how you should make a choke in this game mode work. Attackers also get access to this really advantageous mega pack, which has the shield of this barrier in the way. You also get this nice barrier here, which prevents you from being shot in your spawn room, which is always a nice touch. And it's funny to think that this is the same map that Oasis City Center is on. And as Blizzard does, they really nail the aesthetic of high-tech, but traditional University Hall. And while you're having a team fight, there are these little librarian droids that make sure the books are attended to, literally just another day at the office for them. This map is world-class, and it's an easy S tier for me. When I think of Overwatch, I think of this map. That is how synonymous Ilios Ruins is with Overwatch in my brain. First of all, this map is absolutely beautiful. Every minute detail feels like it's handcrafted. This craggy and overgrown ruin feels like it's perfectly paralleled by this seemingly endless ocean. It feels like something out of an Indiana Jones movie, with buried treasure just a stone's throw away from the action. And while the map is beautiful for sure, how does it actually play? The control point is incredibly sunken into the ground, meaning that standing on it gives you a clear disadvantage. This helps to force teamfights on other parts of the map because you never really want to just be standing somewhere where you're clearly at a disadvantage. This mega pack on the cliffside is a clear point of contention. He who controls the mega pack controls the universe. The control point is almost completely surrounded by these stone pillars, some of which you can stand on top of. These pillars give both defenders and attackers refuge from constantly shooting at each other. This map has a lot of pillars, and they make fights break out in a way that fights can only break out on Ilios Ruins. The courtyards that lead up to the point are big enough to facilitate hit scans, but closed off enough to allow flankers to get on top of them. I can go on and on about the intricacies of this map. There's spots for snipers, spots for brawl comps to work, spots where dive can be really successful, and oftentimes it is. It's really a testament to how the design team put their heads together to make something that really feels good to play, looks good, and in my opinion is the greatest King of the Hill control map in the game. It's S+. So the final ranking is this. If you want to take an image of this, screenshot it, post it on Twitter, call me a cuck, do what you want. I'm only human. This is my opinion. But I do think Oasis City Center is bad. Thanks for watching.